Welcome back and Merry Christmas everybody for the 12th episode of my campaign review and tier list series. Oh man, it's been over a year since I've gotten to do these. But for those who are new or need a recap, this is the series where I review each of AoE2 DE's official campaigns, breaking each down scenario by scenario, evaluating its strengths and weaknesses, and ultimately placing them on the tier list. Each episode will now only cover a single campaign, going in chronological order within the Mountain Royals DLC. As always, I would just like to take a quick moment to say that these videos still take plenty of time to make, so if you were hyped for this return episode, please be sure to leave a like, comment what you think of the campaign on the video, and of course subscribe to the channel for tons more AoE2 content. With our sellout complete, let's start our adventures in the Mountain Royals. Our first chronological campaign in the Mountain Royals is going to be Thoros. Lasting from 1141 to 1169, this Armenians campaign takes place more or less simultaneously with the events of Barbarossa and Saladin. It is clear that Thoros is meant to introduce players to the expansion, making the campaign a showcase of not just the Armenians, but the Mountain Royals as a whole. Even though none of the campaign protagonists are contemporary with one another, Armenians, Georgians, and Persians all tend to crop up at some point in all of these campaigns. That said, despite Armenia conjuring images of the Caucasus Mountains, both the in-game Armenian civilization and Thoros, our protagonist, actually represent the kingdom of Cilician Armenia, centered in modern-day Turkey at the northeast corner of the Mediterranean. Also, very importantly, this is only our third official DE campaign to have orange as the player color, after Genghis Khan and Babur. Hooray for diversity! Anyway, concerning the difficulty of the campaign, the devs made the, interesting decision to rate Thoros as having only a one-sword or easy difficulty. To quote Douglas Adams, this made a lot of people very angry and was widely regarded as a bad move. Thoros is not an easy campaign, and the later missions are certainly among the tougher ones in AoE2 DE. So what exactly makes this campaign tricky? Let's find out by diving into the scenarios. We start this campaign quite humbly in the first scenario, Outlawed. Thoros, having just escaped a dungeon cell in Constantinople, arrives back in Cilicia to find his country overrun by the Byzantine army. Your first order of business is to find some local soldiers to take back your seat at Vaca Castle. After doing this, the build and destroy section of the mission begins, where you have to go and take down 2 of the 3 Byzantine castles on the map. While you are building up, you are introduced to mule carts, as bringing them to designated locations will grant you additional villagers who immediately begin gathering resources near your Swiss Army knife drop-off site. In doing this, you can run into the camp of some Seljuk Traitors who, after receiving a rescued trade cart, will give you 2 otherwise unobtainable trebuchets. Lastly, your 2 brothers of Stephen and Mle are hiding in opposite corners of the map. Stephen will support you if you bring him some infantry, and Mle will join you if you clear a nearby Byzantine camp, which will also give you Bracer, Blast Furnace, and Cap Ram. Alrighty, analysis time. So, all in all, Outlawed is a solid intro scenario to the main characters of Thoros and his brothers, as well as the situation in Cilician Armenia. Destroying the Byzantine castles is a simple objective, but you do at least have some choice in terms of which Byzantine fortress you want to go after. There are also plenty of side objectives, which makes the building up phase of the scenario interesting, as you have to run around bailing out your siblings while also withstanding attacks from the Byzantines, who are no pushovers by the way. My only critique of this opening mission is that everything is marked out for you on the minimap. Vaca Castle, the extra villagers, the Byzantine castles, Stephen and Mle, all of it. It really negates any need to scout on the map, and ruins any feeling of discovery as you look around for all of the side objectives and enemy fortresses. With a foothold in Armenia achieved, Thoros must now withstand the full might of the Byzantine army in the second scenario, the Emperor's Revenge. Now, before you can do anything else in the mission, you are immediately presented with a choice. To which of your brothers will you give the command of the eastern city? Stephen is aggressive and will help you attack the Byzantines, but Mle can better defend himself and also tribute you resources. Once your choice is made, you will gain control of a largely dilapidated town to the south of the map, and are given your objective of either killing or capturing, aka converting, 5 of the 7 Byzantine generals patrolling across the map. The difference between these is that converting the generals will give you an additional ransom from the Byzantine Emperor of 1,000 gold per general. Beyond that, you once again have side objectives. There are 5 Armenian villages across the map that, if you construct and protect a fortified church in them, will tribute you extra resources every so often. In a similar vein, there are groups of wounded Armenian soldiers scattered all over the place, and if healed, they will join your cause. Lastly, the Byzantines, who control several sprawling camps across around 2/3 of the map, are protected by your rival Armenian Hetumids, who will do much to harass you early on. So, although the Emperor's Revenge has you fighting the Byzantines once again, this second mission feels different from the first in how you go about it. First, the choice between which brother will aid you is really interesting, and this sort of thing will be seen throughout much of the rest of the campaign. Beyond that, this mission encourages the use of the powerful Armenian fortified church. You have to build them in the villages to protect them and grant you resources, you need monks and warrior priests to heal the injured units, and converting the enemy generals will give you an extra gold reward. The gold reward discord here is quite relevant as there isn't that much safe gold to mine on the map, forcing you to rely more on the village tributes, ransom payments, or even trade with your brother. These more subtle ways to encourage you to complete your objectives I think are well done here, and prevents this scenario from feeling like a duplicate of the first one. Our first plot twist arrives in the third scenario, Caught in the Crossfire. In the intro slides, the narrator of the campaign is revealed to be none other than Reynald de Chatillon, the guy attacking your trade routes in Saladin. He enters the story on the side of the Byzantine Emperor, who has bribed him and the Knights Templar to go after Thoros. From your small camp to the far north of the map, your first objective is to destroy 2 castles of the Knights Templar, who have 3 fortresses to the west, northwest, and center of the map. They're actually pretty close to your starting location, and you need to be prepared for plenty of infantry and monks being sent your way. Reynald, meanwhile, has a sprawling camp comfortably far away from the fighting to the far south of the map. Although his cavalry, skirmishers, and throwing axemen will be a pain when supporting the Templars, you never actually need to directly assault his camp head-on. However, there is another major player in this region, the Seljuk Turks, who hold a large, well-fortified base to the far east. They will initially leave you alone so long as you pay consistent tribute. However, once the Templar castles are leveled, the Christian forces will realize that they can fight a common enemy instead of each other, so you'll eventually team up with your erstwhile enemies to take down the Seljuks. Okay, so Caught in the Crossfire is a fine scenario. The Templars and Reynald provide plenty of a threat early on while you're building up, but once you get to the Imperial Age, their Castle Age armies become rather feeble. I believe they both reach the Imperial Age eventually, no matter what, but I think that, at least on hard difficulty, it should be a bit sooner. As it stands, the difficulty level in their attacks feels pretty inconsistent. The tribute mechanic with the Seljuks is fine, but you only need to pay 200 to 300 gold to avoid their wrath, which really isn't much for a 150 population economy. There is also the side objective with Simon de Raban, who is a friendly crusader that holds a small fortress to the southeast. He says that if you escort him to his transport ship, he will give you the fortress. This is easy to do, but honestly the fortress is so far out of the way that its value is quite limited. I guess all of this is to say that although the level isn't bad, it feels a bit rough around the edges. The battle shifts to the high seas in the fourth scenario, Bloody Crest Waves. In the buddy duo we never knew we needed, Thoros and Reynald de Chatillon embark on a raid of the island of Cyprus, for the Byzantines had stiffed Reynald for his services against our Armenian protagonist. The scenario begins with another impactful choice. You can choose to either land on the eastern side of the island or the western side, with Reynald's army taking the one you do not pick. Having played both of them, picking the western side opens up many more raiding opportunities and will lean more on land combat, whereas picking the eastern side opens you up to more attacks from the sea, but also houses more resources and a quicker fight with the Byzantines. Speaking of raiding, you cannot build walls or castles in this scenario, and resources to gather on the land are very few. However, you can supplement your income by destroying buildings of the 3 Cypriot factions: Limassol, a semi-fortified city in the south, Nicosia, a very fortified city in the north, or the many Cypriot villages dotting the countryside. However, despite the focus of the scenario being on the island of Cyprus, your true objectives lie across the water. The Byzantine navy is your most dangerous enemy, and to win, you need to destroy all 9 of their docks. They will constantly attack you with ships and transports, so even if you are focused on Cyprus, you'll have to deal with them sooner rather than later. The Byzantines have a camp across the water to the east of the map, as well as camps on the mainland to the south and west. The allied city of Alexandretta stands between the latter of these, and they'll also help you against the Byzantine fleet. Phew, so there is plenty going on in Bloody Crest Waves. Honestly, I think this scenario is great, although many of you will probably disagree with me if I remember my YouTube comments correctly. The mission is challenging and complex, with interesting mechanics and multiple ways to play it. Basically everything I like in a campaign. The limited resources force you to deal with the Cypriots at least to some degree, and you have to balance expanding on the land with your main objective on the sea. Having played the scenario twice, the 2 possible starts cause the scenario to play out quite differently, which I'm always a fan of. You also have a couple of sneaky side objectives, where if you can help rescue some local Cypriots, you can gain line of sight of both the Byzantines and the enemy Cypriot factions. We end the Thoros campaign with a bang in Of Turncoats and Traitors. Having been betrayed by Reynald, and with Cilicia invaded by the Seljuks and Byzantines, Thoros finds himself in a bit of a bad spot. The city of Tarsus is besieged by the Byzantine army, and you must first hold them off for 15 in-game minutes, at which point Reynald reveals his treachery and you are forced to flee to either of your brothers. Stephen has a strong, spacious camp far away from your enemies to the north, and Mle has a smaller camp with lots of resources much closer to your enemies in the northeast. Arriving at the camp will turn it over to you, and your other brother will aid you for as long as you can defend him. From here, your task is simple: defeat your 3 main enemies: the Byzantine army, whose numerous military camps and fortresses lie in the west, Reynald de Chatillon, who has a large camp to the south, and the Seljuks with their fortified base in the east. The only notable side objective here is to retake the city of Tarsus by destroying its castle, which will cause its citizens to grant you another ally. In addition, you can can choose between a temporary ceasefire with either Reynald or the Seljuks, which will last for 15 in-game minutes. Beyond that, this is your big build and destroy 200 pop post-imp finale, so have at it. Still, what can we say about Of Turncoats and Traitors? Although a straightforward mission at its core, you nevertheless get the opportunity to make full use of the Armenians' post-Imperial age, and get to fight a wide variety of unit compositions from the Byzantines, Franks, and Turks. The early defense of Tarsus is actually quite challenging, and you will be hard-pressed to hold for the entire 15 minutes. Furthermore, choosing which base to start with presents another interesting dilemma. Mleh's camp is far more exposed, and you'll quickly find yourself under a ton of pressure from the Seljuks and Reynald, but it allows Stephen to occupy the Byzantines. Meanwhile, choosing Stephen's camp gives you plenty of time to build up, but if you don't help out Mleh, he'll be defeated by the enemy forces. Notably, I did have a bug when playing through this mission the second time, where Tarsus joined me instantly after getting my base, and was then bulldozed by the Byzantines within minutes, so hopefully that gets fixed. Nothing else too fancy in this mission, but a solid ending to the campaign nevertheless. Okay, so for those who don't remember, now that we have broken down each scenario in the Thoros campaign, we're going to take a step back and see how well the campaign works as a whole and evaluate its strengths and weaknesses. In general, there's a lot to like here. Starting with the strengths, I think the Thoros campaign is just solid in terms of both gameplay and characters. Gameplay-wise, Thoros presents a wide variety of build and destroy type scenarios, with many of them emphasizing different aspects of the Armenian civilization. The first level allows you to use their Imperial Age infantry in the Castle Age, the second focuses on monks and warrior priests, the third mission gives you a taste of the Imperial Age. Once you get to the fourth level, you get to fully utilize the extremely powerful Armenian navy, and the finale gives you a tour de force of the Armenian land army in the post-Imperial Age. The challenge level of all of these missions is pretty high, which combined with the plentiful side objectives keeps the gameplay engaging, at least for me. In terms of story, Thoros is again an enjoyable experience. For old school fans such as myself, having Reynald de Chatillon be the narrator and involved as a character is a nice throwback, and also ties the new campaign with the events of older campaigns. Thoros himself is shown to be a multifaceted individual, willing to backstab and crush people to get what he wants, but ultimately is weighed down by this tumultuous life and ends the campaign by abdicating the crown and retiring to a monastery. This draws both commonalities and contrasts with Reynald's ruthless and belligerent personality. Stephen and Mleh not only offer interesting choices in the gameplay, but also add some humorous dialogue here and there, which is always nice. Still, as I always say, no campaign is perfect, and Thoros here is no exception. First and foremost, I think a lot of people were unpleasantly surprised with how challenging this campaign was, especially when it was described as being easy by the game. Now, I actually like the difficulty of Thoros, but I do think that it might be more clearly communicated with players. This should easily be a two-sword campaign at minimum, but still, that's more superficial than anything inherent to the campaign itself. Now, within Thoros, there are a few problems here that I need to address. First, as much as you are given solid build and destroy scenarios, that's all you're given. A defense-type mission in A to B, or some sort of escort-like level would be a welcome balance to all of the build up and destroy X targets, which is every single level except for the last one, which is just to more generally defeat your enemies. Yes, you get to use the strengths and different aspects of the Armenian civilization, but the core gameplay is still similar. Part of this has to do with the campaign only being 5 scenarios, but unfortunately it seems like the 6 scenario campaigns are a thing of the past now. Lastly, and this is only a minor detail, Thoros himself takes the backseat in this campaign to Reynald, who spends as much time talking about himself as he does his Armenian frenemy. This could perhaps be solved with some more dialogue in the scenarios themselves from Thoros, which could be done pretty easily as he appears as a hero unit in almost every mission. Now, finally, with our analysis of the campaign complete, we actually have to compare Thoros to the rest of the AoE2 DE campaigns and place him on the tier list. I still think its strengths far outweigh its flaws, so a strong A-tier placement seems appropriate for our Armenian prince. Solid is, I think, the best word I can use to describe the Thoros campaign. Its highs aren't super high, except for the 4th scenario, but its lows are also not super low, the 3rd level being the weakest point. Thoros is the campaign who clocks into the office every day and gets its job done. It provides some challenging and compelling gameplay, showcases the Armenian civilization, and develops some interesting characters. Yes, it does feel like there could be some opportunity to add some bells and whistles in terms of both story and gameplay diversity, but that doesn't make the campaign below average. All of the choices in the scenarios themselves go a long way in making this campaign replayable. At the end of the day, Thoros might not capture the imagination of many players, but it's still one that I think most people will have a good time with. And with that, we have completed our first Mountain Royals campaign. This video is going to be ending here, so be sure to tune in for the next campaign tomorrow. Of course, I would love to hear your thoughts on the Thoros campaign in the comments. I really do read all of them. Before we go, I do need to thank my Patreon supporters with Anonymous in the Great Wolf tier, and Rairu, Carolyn, Dieter, and Liquid Egg Product, and Tandoori in the Dire Wolf tier. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.